Hi, everybody. I'm Diane Brady. I'm here with Alan Dershowitz, noted trial lawyer, professor emeritus at Harvard, and of course, author of Get Trump. Alan, good to see you. Let's start. We're actually talking about not Trump to start with, but Hunter Biden, these 3 gun charges. What do you make of that? Long time coming or unfair?
Well, both. I predicted it. As soon as the deal fell apart, I knew that there'd be pressure to indict him on gun charges. That has happened. Is it unfair? It is unfair. People generally don't get indicted for these gun charges. Normally, they're put into diversion programs or not even accused at all. And so politics played a role here as well. I think the Justice Department is trying to show they're even-handed and that they will go after the president's son as well as the former president.
So it seems like now both Democrats and Republicans could be accusing the DOJ of essentially weaponizing, the tools of justice. Is that fair?
I think that's right. And I think it will be an issue in this campaign. I mean, each side is going to claim the other is more criminal, and each side is claiming that the other side is weaponizing the system. The Republicans are going to claim that the Justice Department is going after Trump and giving a sweetheart deal to Hunter Biden, and the other side is going to proceed with impeachment investigations in Congress. And the American public are the losers. We want to hear about the economy, about the borders, about foreign policy, but this election is going to turn largely on who are the worst criminals and who are the worst abusers of justice. That's not something that will make life for Americans any better.
And it certainly is raising more questions as to whether it'll be a, Biden-Trump ticket in 2024 in the first place. Let me, before we get on to that, what impact do you think these charges will have on President Biden, who's already facing, as you mentioned, an impeachment inquiry?
Well, I think there ought to be a special counsel appointed to look into all the smoke surrounding these allegations against President Biden and about whether he misused the office of vice president to help his son. So far, I haven't seen the evidence, but it's a serious enough charge that it warrants a special counsel. I think the tragedy is that this election will be largely occupied with who are the worst criminals and who are the worst abusers. And that's not the way the American system is supposed to work.
Now, you and I have discussed before the various charges. I believe there are 91, if you count them all up, against President Trump. One that seems to be starting to potentially fall apart is the New York Attorney General's case. Talk a bit about that.
Well, the New York Attorney General's case is a civil case, not a criminal case.
Right.
And it was never a very strong case, nor was the New York criminal case a very strong case. The central focus is probably going to be on the January 6th cases, which will depend on whether or not the jury can find that Donald Trump himself actually knew he had lost the election, or whether he had talked himself into believing that he had won the election.
So you think that the New York charges have always been a moot point, basically?
They've been absurd. They are unethical, improper. The worst indictment I've seen in 60 years of practicing law. Under this indictment, they could have gone after Alexander Hamilton for paying hush money back in the founding days of the Republic. Nobody ever expects anybody who pays hush money to then report it on their corporate form. It's an absurd indictment and will probably fall by the wayside. Of course, in New York City and Manhattan, they could get a conviction based on that, but I can't believe it would be upheld on appeal.
No, I know you're not a political pundit, so I don't know if you want to weigh in on the likelihood of a Trump-Biden ticket. But in any case, what do you think is the likely fix coming out of this for the Justice Department, which is now coming under scrutiny for charges on both sides of the fence?
There's an obvious fix, and that is the Justice Department ought to appoint the most credible special counsel to look into the relationship between Hunter Biden and President Biden. It has to be a former judge, somebody with no political connections, somebody who all Americans would agree can do a credible job. Nobody's going to trust the Republicans in Congress to do an honorable job on this, and very few people will trust today's Justice Department to do a credible job on this. So what's needed is a special counsel who's above reproach.
Now, you don't like the special counsel as an institution itself, though, do you?
I don't, but it's the least worst alternative when you have a president who is surrounded with smoke, and we don't know whether there are fires or arson. We don't know whether there is an aura of corruption or not. That's why, if you ever needed a special counsel, this is the time for it. In general, my preferred approach would be to have a division in the Justice Department whereby you don't have the same person trying to be the advisor to the president politically and also trying to be the objective, neutral enforcer of the law. It's an inherent problem, and it's not going to be easily solved. So we may need a special counsel at this point.
For President Trump, what would you be advising him at this point? Do you think he is managing these various allegations well as he tries to work his way toward being the GOP nominee once again?
Well, I think he's thinking about these things completely politically and leaving it in the hands of his lawyers to decide how to handle the cases in court. In general, I think his lawyers are doing the right thing. They're going to move to have the case transferred to federal court from the state court in Fulton County. They're going to try to get a change of venue in the Washington, D.C. case. They're going to try to get some delays. But he, in the meantime, is turning this to his political advantage. He's strengthening his base. Look, the most important thing for those of us who don't support Donald Trump, as I don't, is to see him defeated fair and square in an open and fair election, not to have him disqualified under the 14th Amendment or his prospects influenced by cases that are brought against him that are going to be tried right in the middle of the campaign. The best thing that could possibly happen is a fair, open, and free election in which he loses on the merits.
Is there anything else on your radar that you would put on ours, Alan, with regard to this sort of, I'm not going to say political quagmire, let's just say, the various cases that are unfolding as we're heading into, in many ways, the heart of the election season?
Right. I think there will not be a trial of Hunter Biden. I think Hunter Biden will try to make a plea bargain where he admits all of the factual allegations against him, but tries to preserve for appeal the issue of whether or not there was double jeopardy, whether or not the other issues, the Second Amendment precludes him being tried for gun charges. I think that's the way it's going to be resolved. He will get a probationary sentence, not a prison term, and I don't believe there'll be a full-fledged trial in the middle of the election. I think the election cycle will be dominated by the trials of Donald Trump.
And is it likely that Trump could also get out? Do you foresee any scenario in which he might go to jail?
I don't. I think that he'll be convicted in those jurisdictions where, 90% of the jury pool voted against him, like Washington, D.C., or Fulton County, where 75% voted against him. But I think there'll be reversals on appeal, and I don't think that he will be imprisoned. Of course, in Georgia, there is a mandatory prison term if he is convicted, and that's possible, but it will be stayed pending appeal, and the case will eventually get to the federal courts and maybe even to the Supreme Court.
Thank you very much, Alan. I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thanks.